So, hi everyone. I'm so excited today to have such a beautiful spirit and new friend on my podcast. This is Cole. He's been facilitating Cardinal Shadow Work containers for how many years now?
Gosh, almost three.
Almost three. That probably feels like 30.
Yep.
I had the privilege of working with you and a other group of people for 6 months from last December to May, I think it was. You are such an extraordinary, intelligent, and grounding human being. So I'm very grateful for your presence in the world and the way that you show up. And I'm excited to share that with the people who watch this and just other people who may not be aware of you yet, but totally should be. Um, and I'm just really thankful you've taken the time out of your day today to be with me and to have this conversation.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me. I've done, I think, maybe two other like podcast things like this because I'm very particular on who I speak with. I got to make sure that they have good medicine. And of course,
Mm.
since we've been doing this work for quite some time, I knew this was going to be beautiful. So thank you for having me.
Oh, yay. Well, yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. I think when you start in sort of a teacher and mentee position, you can feel like you can't have these very just like level eye to eye conversations because somebody's teaching you something. And so I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of that experience as well and what teachership is and looks like. But I'm curious how, however you want to introduce yourself and what you do or the things that you want to talk about and what brought you to doing the work that you're doing, most importantly.
Yeah. So my name's Cole LaRochelle. I'm an Anunka of the Lakota tradition. That means I'm adopted in. And so my elder is Wakayama Wakinhinhan, Miranda Pretty Owl. I no longer work with her. However, that's a whole story in of itself, but I give respect where they are needed. And I think it's very important that people always acknowledge where they learned their teachings from, how they got to where they are. Those are such important things, especially in spirituality. We'll definitely have to talk about that. But that's who I am. What I do is my main emphasis, my work, my medicine is within shadow. And what that encompasses mainly is it's looking at the suppressed, the dark, the ugly, and also the blind spots we have. And through that, we're then able to also see the medicine we hold, the gifts, the beauty that has been kept hidden from us, tucked away within the shadow. And so it's intense work, it's hard work, but it's needed, especially with the world and the state it's in. It is dire that we have these conversations.
Yes, yes, absolutely. There's a lot of darkness in the world right now, and doing shadow work might sound to people who are unfamiliar with the indigenous perspective of that, the indigenous teachings of that. They may correlate it to more darkness and, kind of uplifting more shit for everybody to deal with. But it's quite the opposite. It's a bringer of light, and that's a really important, yes, an important message to have. Um, so you were adopted into Lakota tradition. When did this happen, and what was the process that brought you like to say, okay, I want to have an elder, I want to have this relationship, I want to begin my spiritual work? What was the kind of leading up to that?
Yeah, so for me, I never got into spirituality to get into spirituality. Is how my path, how the story has unfolded for me is so growing up, my family, we always experienced supernatural things, encounters with spirit, and it was normal. And then once I started to go to school and I would begin to say things, kids would give weird looks. They're like, that's weird. And then so I learned very quickly, oh, this is not something that happens to everyone. This is something we need to keep quiet. And I'll never forget, I was probably around 6, 7, 8, somewhere around that, very young. And it was time for me to go to bed, and I was screaming, crying. I was like, I don't want to go in the kitchen. There's a ghost in the kitchen. I won't go in there. And my dad, which is a very important figure in not only my life, but also in this work, he grabbed me. He's very stoic, pulled me into the kitchen. He's like, see, there's no ghost. And then after that, he took me upstairs. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get my ass beat. Like,
Mm.
this is not a good thing. And instead, what he did is he took me into his bedroom, he shut the door, and he sat me down. And that was my first understanding, my first really initiation into understanding what is spirit, what is gifts, what is medicine that we call it now. And my dad basically said there are things that our family can do that some can't. And he started to show me how you can call on spirits, how you can feel spirits, how you can see these things. And as an 8-year-old, right, you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, this is so exciting.
Totally.
And so it was a really big bonding moment because me and my father, especially when I was little, we didn't have the strongest relationship. But this was one of those like moments where it was vulnerable, it was raw. And there's this beautiful thing. And then the final thing my dad said is, this is the devil's work. This is bad. And if you tell anyone about it, you will lose it.
Mm,
And so this indoctrination into understanding the medicine was quickly covered with silence. This is bad, neglected. And mind you, I have two older sisters who also they have very different gifts than me, but they're very strong in their gifts. And so from ages 8 to about 18, it wasn't talked about, it was neglected. We all knew about it. We would
mhm,
sometimes have conversations, but it wasn't highlighted. It wasn't this like conversation. We weren't talking about spirituality, we weren't talking about spirits. We weren't even talking about like what mainstream spirituality is, like crystals and things like that. No,
mhm,
is
mhm,
it was there's things our family can do that we don't talk about. And there would be stories that would come up of like what my grandfather would do, what my great grandfather would do. A lot of the medicine I know comes from the paternal, my father's side. However, also my mother has some, but that's a whole nother thing. And so it was about 18. I was at college in San Diego State. This was right before COVID. And I was there, and it was a huge culture shock for me because I came from Aurora, which is very diverse, lots of culture. Me being like basically the only one of the few white kids in my school going to San Diego State, where it is predominantly white with wealth you can't even imagine. I
mhm.
couldn't relate to anyone. I wasn't making any friends. I was going to school for international business because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And
Wow.
I was feeling really lost. And I began to drink a lot
Mm,
and I was feeling really, really lost. And I was laying in bed, and around this, I was about 18 at this point. I was laying in bed, and I would begin to hear the sounds of a rainforest. And I would like hear these sounds, and I was kind of in between that state of sleep and waking, and I'd wake myself up, and I'm like, I'm in a dorm room next to two highways. Why am I hearing that?
mhm,
And so that began to happen. And then my roommate at the time, he had like a PlayStation, it would like turn on randomly. And
mm,
it like freaked him out because he was like,
mhm.
what the hell's going on? Like all this stuff. And then there was one moment where I was sleeping and I woke up and there were a whole bunch of people around my bed. And I knew they were ancestors. I just didn't know the word for it at the time. And they told me, you need to go home. And
Mm,
it freaked me out because, mind you, everything my father has told me from that point has been, this is evil, this is bad. And so that's what I carried with me. It was through a lens of shadow, is this is a bad thing.
right.
And so I was scared of it. I didn't know. And I started to really slip into almost a psychosis
Mm,
of what's real, what's not real. Am I crazy? Am I not crazy? What's going on here? And one night in particular, I was really down. I was really tired of how my life was going. And I said, this is it. And so I went out with my friend. I drank as much as I could because I knew this was it. And I remember being in the club and I could see all of the spirits. I get emotional. Could see all of the spirits running around and I could like feel myself like ready to transition into that space. And I got home and I was sitting in her dorm room and I kept drinking, kept drinking, kept drinking. And I closed my eyes. I could feel my spirit leaving my body, like I was dying. And I left and I shot up to this space. And at the time, I didn't know who that spirit was. Now I know it's a very sacred spirit within the Lakota tradition that looked at me, shook its head, and punched my spirit. And I was punched straight back into my body, and I projectile vomited all over her dorm room. And
Wow.
I was like, holy shit, what just happened to me?
Yeah.
So the next day, 3 days later, I'm on Instagram and I see this panel of like women. I can't remember what Instagram account it was. I see this panel of women and they're talking about spirituality. It's like, this is interesting. So I'm listening to them. I see them, and there's a woman on the corner and she's saying nothing. She's silent. All these other women have a lot to say. They're promoting all their things, and she's on the corner quiet. And every time she spoke, it resonated. It was powerful. It was few words, but the impact was there.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm interested about her. So I reached out to her, and sure enough, she lived in Colorado
Wow.
where I needed to go home.
Yeah.
And so it was like Thanksgiving break or something like that. I was going to go home regardless. So I went home, I reached out to her, and she said, come to my ranch. We'll talk then. And so I go to her ranch, and I'll never forget my first time going to her ranch. She lived in the middle of fucking nowhere, like nowhere. And I get on my car and she opens her door and I walk up and the first word she ever says to me is, I know. And the
Mm,
second word she said to me was, how bad is it? And mind you, I have all of this fear, all of this programming from my father is you're telling this stranger that all these gifts are happening. It's going to be taken from you. You're going to lose it, right? All these things. And I just tell her. And she wasn't emotional. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't smiling. She was just like, mm-hmm,
mm,
nodding her head, listening. She goes, okay, here we go. And from that point, that's where she introduced me into shadow work. It is the first thing I started with. And so we started with naming my shadows. We started with understanding what are shadows. We started to see and change the perspective that what was happening to me wasn't a punishment or evil, it was actually a gift. And from there, I just began to really propel and work beside my elder. She wasn't my elder at that point. She was just some random woman I met online that I felt like had something for me.
mm,
And she could see the medicine in me. And so we started with shadow work, and it really just evolved from there. Is I was then helping her with doing certain healings, so ancestral healings. It then moved into soul retrievals. It then towards the middle end, it moved into entity extractions. I was her right hand. Everything I really know comes from my elder.
mm,
And there was a point where, so she's a Lakota woman, but the teachings she would give out weren't Lakota. She was just teaching the traditional way, which is what I teach, is I don't teach a certain tradition. I teach a way of life, a perspective. And through that, a lot of people came through with big medicines, big shadows, and it hit a point. I don't know how the conversation went. Oh, I remember, is one night, this was after a sacred way, which is one of the intensives we would do. And didn't think anything of it. I was cleaning up. It was late at night. And I went outside to go grab my boots. And she lived in the middle of nowhere. And I stepped outside and I looked all around me. And all I saw was lightning. No rain, no thunder, no wind. Just the
mm,
sky was just lighting up. And I was like in awe. And I knew my elder worked with the lightning beings. So I ran into the house to grab her and I was like, come outside. Like, you got to see this. And I beat her outside and I was looking. And in that moment, I really can't tell you what happened, but I saw the lightning come down and everything was slow-mo. I was looking at the grass and I could see the light moving through the grass. Everything was slow. And I was falling down towards the grass and it was super slow. And I remember hitting the floor and then I was surrounded by these huge beings and they were looking at me. And I was like, I don't know. Do you need an offering? I don't have a song for you. I don't have a dance for you. I don't even know who you are. But like, why am I here? And they just nodded. And then I came back into my body and my elder was holding me, rocking me back and forth, singing a traditional song about the spirits and what just happened. And I had no idea what happened. I was struck by lightning. Uh,
wow.
People witnessed it. They were all trying to ground me back into my body. And my elder just said, don't fear it, don't fear it, don't fear it. And then from there, that was her indicator to the spirit world of its time. And so then I went on to my visions, which are like what a lot of people know as like vision quests, whatever the word is. Lakota, it's ubechas, so it's 4 days, no food, no water, no shelter. And I started to do those. And the reason you do those is to get a vision. It's also to show the humility to the spirit world, is nothing will break you like the elements. And through that, then came my naming ceremony, where I got my traditional name, and it just progressed. And from there, it's like a snippet of all of it, but that's how I began this work. And the reason I teach shadow work is because it is what saved my life. It's what continues to, and it saves a lot of people's lives. And so I didn't get into this because there was money. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Hmm.
Is I was taught from my father that you don't choose this. Like it chooses you. And from there, that's how it really evolved.
Hmm. Yeah. It's such an incredible story. I had no idea that you had been struck by lightning. That is insane. But very, very on brand, I think, for the medicines that you bring forward. Even the way that you speak about the medicine and shadow work is very intense. And it's one of the things that drew me to you first was your intensity. But what an incredible, like, and I know there's lots of dots that you could have connected to bring us to this place that you're at now, right? There's so many different pieces. But I think in all of it, you were, I think a lot of the times in the world that we're in now, when you're in a dark place, it's seen as like a phase, right? And it's like, oh, it'll go away and you'll get back to normal. I feel like for you, and much of my story as well, has been like every time I'm moving through something, it doesn't feel like I'm trying to get out of it, but I am trying to go through it. And I think that's what the basis of shadow work is it's not bypassing, it's not trying to overcompensate with a million different modalities. It's really a way of life. And for me, I think, when I first came to you, I was like, okay, I've done all the Western shit that I can think of that's been available to me. This is not, there's like this whole other half of me that feels unfulfilled, not to get something out of another modality or another person's medicine, but just this desire to feel like the work that I'm doing on myself is holistically resonating, that it's not just my mind that's healing, it's not just my body that's healing, and my heart is involved and my spirit is involved. And something that I think you do incredibly well, you teach all of this really high up spiritual, depthy concepts and all of this, right? But at the same time, you are doing that to help yourself and others live the human experience, right? We cannot shoot ourselves out into spirit over and over and over again and expect that to make living here easier. It's not, it's going to do the opposite. And so I think from coming from a place of being told that what your gifts are potentially harmful, that already stunts your desire to seek it out, to understand it deeper, to learn about it. And so I think it's interesting how spirit kind of led you down this place of like desperation for the truth of yourself. It wasn't about making money. It wasn't about other people really at all. It was just about you surviving what you were experiencing. And I can imagine, you can correct me if you're wrong, but looking back in hindsight, I'm sure you can see how much you were experiencing the collective. And I'm curious how you've learned in learning in learning your own shadows, like how have you learned to discern between what is being collectively felt, especially when you're in that like teenage world, right? I think we're really open to the world because it's the first time we're trying to understand our sense of belonging. And so I guess what I'm getting at is like, was there a moment that you realized in choosing shadow work that you were going like against what your dad said? Was there like some, because through that kind of trauma of being pushed down, there's like a detachment from intuition. And so much of this work has to do with being really authentically aligned with yourself and utilizing intuition. So in that being sort of like ricocheted in an uncomfortable way for you, how did you move past that part of yourself that was like almost stereotyping these abilities that you had? How did you discern between collectively experiencing all of this pain and this awareness and then your own, and then coming to that conclusion of like, okay, but this is here are my next steps? Like, how did you get to that place where you decided that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with deciding what that next place is to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If I'm being honest, it's life or death.
Mm-hmm.
And that intensity of that statement, that's what it is when people come to do shadow work and it works for them.
Yeah.
Is because in that moment, right, I had all that programming from my father, from the ancestors that came before him of this is bad. Because mind you, like to this day, people are still hunted for doing medicine work.
Right.
They're still killed, they're scrutinized, they're demonized. Like it still happens. And that shadow, it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's valid.
Mm-hmm.
Of like that my grandfather told my dad that, my great grandfather told him that because they were killed for it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why it was hush hush. And what happened to me though is I wasn't living in a world where I was being hunted for my medicine. I was living in a world where my medicine was hunting for me.
Mm.
And that's very different.
Yes.
And I had to make that decision of it quite literally was life or death because if I was to continue down the path, I don't even want to like think about that of what my life would look like if I didn't step out of that. I would be miserable. I would most likely either one, be dead, or two, an addict, numbing out, trying to get away, lost, caught up in capitalism and money and trying to prove like it was life or death. And so
Yeah.
for people that are like in that phase of, well, is shadow work for me or whatever, you have to ask yourself, and it's a you question of, are you willing to continue down the path you're going, or do you want to change the wheel, change the direction? Because it always goes, because again, we walk in a wheel, is you either repeat or you evolve. You step into a new one. And in that moment, I didn't care how scary the unknown was. It had to have been better than what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that desperation, that level of like, I don't even care at this point, I need to. And what breaks my heart even more is that level of desperation that is profited off of, that is targeted within mainstream spirituality.
Yeah.
Is a lot of people that find themselves going to plant medicines or Reiki or sound baths or breath work or any of these things, therapy, is they are looking for help, they are looking for direction. And these people, instead of truly wanting to help them, they see them as a price tag.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say this within Cardinal Shadow Work, and I've said it to your group, is if you need me after 6 months, I have failed.
Right.
And you are one of like the a living testament of it. Is like when you first came, you were at that point where you were like, I've tried everything. I don't feel good. I want to change. And you did. And look at you now. Like we talk about this all the time, is you did the work. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. You were pissed off. It was hard. And
Mm-hmm.
in the same breath, you met the medicine where you needed to meet it. And that's that decision is it sounds extreme life or death, but it's true.
Yeah.
Because in order to step into your medicine, a part of you has to die.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, you brought up addiction and you brought up numbing out. And I think addiction is so closely related to an escapism of any kind, but mostly through addictions, right? Is so closely related to people who have big spirits, who have big, like, I imagine everybody as like a channel, right? For light, for information, for whatever. And it's like, I think very spiritual people who are naturally inclined and are meant to do that kind of work in this world, that channel's really wide open from the get-go. You don't really have to open it up to start, right? It's already there, it's already happening to you. And so I think people with addiction, I'm curious if in your experience it's like, what was the spirit searching for there? Obviously disconnection and escapism, but also meaning, right? When you're escaping how you feel, like for me in my addiction, it was I just didn't want to feel sober. Anything was better than feeling sober. But then it becomes anything is feeling better than being in this place that I'm in. And so it is life or death. You know, for me, there's been many, many times, where suicidal tendencies and ideations and self harm was a big piece of my life. Um, but it became this thing of like, eh, do I really want to pretend like I'm okay when I'm not? And do I really want to say that what I'm doing for myself is enough? And do I want to keep seeing a Reiki person every 3 months and thinking that that's healing me? And that's the other piece of it that you mentioned as well. Is it's like when you go to therapy, there's also that like looking up. There's a lot of that dynamic of looking up. This person knows more than me. I have to come to them to solve everything, to fix my problems, to even start, to even have awareness. I need this third party. We see the same thing in religion. We need this third party, this middle person to connect us to spirit. We know that's not true. It's the same with therapy. Therapy offers a lot of opportunity to purge, I believe, but that's sort of step one, right? When you learn like little, CBT, DBT modalities, that's great as well. That's real life coping. But when it's a spiritual issue, and I believe most of the time that's what we're dealing with, when it's a spiritual issue, you have to do something that is so grandiose compared to what you've been doing because it's spirit.
Yeah.
Spirit is so much bigger than us. We cannot fathom what spirit can fathom. We
Hmm.
don't have that capability. We're not built for that. But we are built to connect, and we are built to have we are built to deal with the things that we have been through. So when I first came to you, it was so much shame that I had about like my bipolar diagnosis, so much shame about, coddling my partner in my relationship to like save face for other situations. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't have it in me to repeat this pattern. So what is my option? Well, I either need to choose something way different than what I've been doing, or the other option is that I'm choosing the same thing over and over again. So for me, it was very life or death. And the ceremony that we just had about a month ago, I guess now, a month ago or so, I said to you guys, I said to everybody up front, this was my vow. This was my vow to stay. And I say it every day at my altar now. I stay another day because it's that fucking real. It's that serious. Um, a lot of the times too, I think this like need for meaning and need for purpose has turned into over identifying with mental health issues, over identifying with a personal identity, over identifying with external ideologies, and we just lose track of ourselves in the chaos of everybody else because we're not supposed to be attached to everybody else, you know,
Mhm.
in that type of like absorbing, not just observing, which is a thing that you say all the time as well.
Yeah.
So in that experience of addiction, as you moved through working with your elder, at what point did you start to feel like yourself disengaged from that um, teacher and mentee like space? Because I think a lot of us forget we have a voice. When we go to therapy, it's like, I'm seeing a therapist. Okay, great. But do you like that therapist? Is that therapist helping you? Okay, you're going to a Reiki healer. That's great. But like, what are they grounded into? Like, what is it that they're helping you know about yourself? How are you getting taught to learn about yourself so that you can find those medicines? So for you, at what point did you say, okay, something's now not clicking? There's something more to what I'm experiencing. And how did you find your voice in that to sort of speak up for yourself and make yet again another shift in your trajectory?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. This that was a hard initiation, if not harder, to leave my elder than it was to start the work.
Mm,
Is because a lot of people, when they get into spirituality, whether it's a teacher, a guide, or an elder, like in traditional spaces, it doesn't matter. You inherently begin to view them as a parent. Even if you have a good relationship, I have a great relationship with my mom and my father, but you still view them as a parent because you're spiritually young, right? And they're giving you this wisdom, they're guiding you through it, and you're adapting and adopting their mindsets, their beliefs, their teachings, and you're a sponge. And that's where a lot of harm can be done because if the teacher isn't teaching you how to build your own discernment, you just become mini thems. And with my elder, everyone has their shadows in their medicine. Everyone, including me, as I know I have my shadows and things like that. And the part that is the most fascinating to me is the reason I left my elder was because of the teachings that she provided
mm,
is she was going against her own teachings. She was
wow.
going against these things that she would preach about and speak about, and there began to be a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of contradiction. And mind you, the medicine she works with and I work with is all about duality and contradiction, but through that can build a level of confusion and also just contortion and staying stagnant.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And it hit a point where the emphasis was put so heavy on we need to fulfill the vision at any cost. And the vision was to share medicine to do healing work. And my thing went, that's awesome. But if it's harming people, then it's no longer medicine. Is there's a difference between people going through their shadow and having to be, yelled at, purged, do whatever it is, but
mm-hmm,
then them getting out on the other side of the medicine versus just doing harm. And their biggest reason that I stepped away from my elder was she was not doing her shadow work. To this day, I don't think she is. And it's fascinating because those are the teachings that I received from her.
mm-hmm,
And it was just this space of she didn't want to hear others' opinions, including those that she built up. Like she would literally call me and this other individual like her children. She's like, I listened to you guys. She would say that, and then we'd say, hey, we shouldn't be doing this, or let's try it this way. And then we weren't humble enough, or we were
mm,
going against her, being disrespectful. And that's why, like, to this day, my elder still teaches me. Even though she's not teaching me, whether it's teachings like this, everything I've lived and watched through her and things I used to judge her on and never be able to understand, I understand now as being in that role where people are projecting their shadows onto you and seeing all these things. She still teaches me through that. And so she will always be an elder to me. She always will.
right.
But really, that decision point was coming where I was like, I could feel the medicine dispersing itself from the land that she was on through the people. And I was like, something's off. And there were so many signs that something had to change. And when I left, when I made that decision, everyone left.
Wow.
Because it took one individual to be like, I'm not standing for this. Something's off.
Yeah.
And then everyone else's stories began to come out. It's because we idolize medicine. We want medicine, but we forget that medicine doesn't just belong to one person, it's in everyone. And
Hmm.
that's part of my responsibility is since I was touched by the medicine in that way, it is part of my responsibility, my oath to allow that touch to happen to other people. You felt it, people feel it. Again, it's not me. It's
Yeah.
the medicine touched me through my elder, and then through me, Spirit said, you have a responsibility.
Hmm.
And so that's really that severance point.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, you certainly got a dose of mass duality and that experience of like coming to somebody and having this really deep connection and this safety with them. Like probably one of the first times you truly felt safe spiritually, to just be all 52 cards face up and to share your gifts and then to be also needed, right? That gives us purpose is when we're needed. And so many times people they hurt themselves over time, from so many different things where it's like they can't get back to that place where they value themselves. So then they go everywhere else for others to value them. But I think you did one of the most important things in the world, which is to say, okay, I've learned from this person. Now it's my duty not to just withhold all this information or to say it fucked me up or to say it wasn't right and this didn't work. And this, it's literally to take the good that it brought into your life, learn from the bad or the not so great, and to carry that on. And how beautiful that you've been able to do that because you've done an exquisite job not putting yourself on a pedestal where any of us in your containers that I know of have felt incapable of speaking to you like this. It's just so real, right? It's just so fucking real. It's just so human.
Yeah.
And so much of what we see now in online because we have this availability to all this information, this new age spirituality, the cultishness of love and light, all these things that you talk about all the time. It really puts people at this like in this displacement of like either you're all in that or you're all out, right? We constantly this black and white world, but I think duality, the lesson that I've learned from it a lot is not to take this like third person perspective of like, well, maybe it's this side and that makes sense because of these reasons, or maybe it's this side because that makes sense for these reasons. It's actually choosing, to say, yes, I could see both sides, but this is where I stand. And I think for you, that's been a really uh is that duality and getting to that middle ground is just you exemplify that and embody that in so many ways. Not only with I do the spiritual work, but I also go have fun with my friends. And also, yes, I'm teaching you guys these things, but it's not me teaching you these things. This is spirit. This is talking through me. This is channeling through me. This is working through me.
Yeah.
I think that it's your version of flow state. I'm sure you would agree with that when you are leading in trance, when you are leading in just teaching sessions, when you're just here and the way that you show up in the world. But it's not saying that it's not you is not to take away from what you're doing. It's to give humility and reverence for the fact that it's not you changing our lives, it's us changing our lives. Again, you said at the beginning and you've said it throughout, if you need me after these 6 months, I haven't done my job. And then there's a flip of that, which we talked about during our weekend, which was if you're not doing the work, then you're going to need me. So it's also on you, right? But it's again, it's that you've never in this work, in this spiritual work, in shadow work, when you're diving so deeply into yourself and you're not doing it through a colonized lens, it's so fucking scary because it's so uncomfortable. It's not the same way. It's like you go to therapy, you do an hour and you move on with your day. This shit stays with you in every moment of your life moving forward. When you begin shadow work, it's an entirely new lifetime
Yeah.
if you really take it
Absolutely.
on and you really, really, yeah, integrate it. But I think that mass duality, that is something that I've struggled with, right? Because like I can go way high up into the stars and into space, but I can also ground deeply into being a human and how hard that is and how uncomfortable that is. So through shadow work, it's really just been uh, understanding that we all have these capabilities, we all have purpose, we all have meaning. Other people aren't going to make that make sense for you on their own. It's not about other people doing it for you. Um, Speaking of like other people not doing it for you, it's the experience that I had, which I'm still integrating during the weekend, where I was hit with so much and I wasn't coming back, and I was mad about coming back from trance. Trance is not meditation, by the way. And actually, I would love for you, before I hop into that story, explain to us what trance is and how you utilize that modality.
Yeah. So trance, as you said, is not the same as meditation. Meditation, you can go on YouTube, you can go on Spotify, and there's a whole bunch of guided meditations.
Yeah.
And what meditation is it's going into the mind, it's going in sometimes to the heart-ish. And so it's guided, and you're creating the story as you go. So they're saying, okay, now you're seeing this, now you're going here, and then this occurs. What trance is trance is going into the spirit. It's literally going into the spirit world. All of our ancestors did this.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, the best way I can explain it is a lot of people's like, first experience with trance will either be with plant medicines, so like mushrooms, ayahuasca, peyote, things like that. But a lot of people naturally go there where they're in the spirit world. It can feel very similar to dream time, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not asleep. You are conscious in the spirit world. And the reason trance is so important is because you're entering into the spirit world with intention. And from there, you are able to not only meet ancestors, your spirits, you're also able to go into your shadows. You're able to see what we can't meet in the tangible. And so trance is really that process of dropping into your spirit and then receiving what is around you in the spirit world. So then you can bring it back home and do the work that needs to be done.
Yes. Yes. So in that, knowing that, I we were doing a lot of trance work during our weekend, and the trance experience that I had, I think it was maybe the second or third, I can't remember, that we had done that weekend. And I, every time I came back, I got really upset. I was like really upset. I didn't want to come back. My spirit did not want to come back in my body, is what I thought. And then as I've recollected the experience, I look back at it, and it's more like my my spirit wanted to come back, but my body was almost rejective, like rejecting it. Like I want you to go on somewhere else. I don't want to keep functioning, right? And that I think has a lot to do with the grief I've experienced, the trauma I've experienced, the abuse I've experienced, all the things, right? But I'm in this intense amount of pain. I'm like curled up, I could, I'm sure it looked weird, completely curled up. All of my muscles were tensed up, and I could not for the life of me come back. I just couldn't. There was this like, I don't want to. And then so now what I think happened was it's like, oh, you don't want to? This is how it feels to not want to. You don't want to connect. You don't want to drop in. You don't want to come back. Then don't come back. See how it feels. See how it feels to be this displaced. See how it feels to be this disconnected. You don't want that, because it's not the organic way of transitioning into spirit world, right? You don't get to choose the way that that happens. At least we hope that we don't choose it for ourselves. And so in that moment of being curled up, completely unable to get back into my body, and again, I'm conscious of myself. I'm there, I'm responding. But I was in so much pain, and I remember reaching up at you. Everybody had left me at that point. Everybody had been to me at one point during that, I know. And I'm reaching up to you, and I'm like, help, and you're looking down at me, and you're like, do you want me to make it go away? And I knew when you said that, what you were really saying was, do you want me to do the work for you, or are you going to do it? And I knew that if I let you take it away, and take it away, meaning if you had walked my spirit for me, I would have lost so much of the medicine that was coming in.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been me doing it. So spirit would have taken that as okay, well, you didn't show up. You didn't show up for the contract or the vow, whatever you want to call it. For me, I call it a vow. You didn't show up.
Yep.
So
100%.
now that's a backtrack almost, right? Or like it's a, you could have jumped, you could have stepped onto this next stepping stone, but you didn't. So now you're gonna have to sit here and feel what that feels like. But I said to you, I said no. because I knew in that moment what you meant and I knew what spirit was doing. Um, Even if I can't put it into words, I know that that had to have happened the way that it did. Um, and again, recollecting everything that happened. But I'm curious, when you're doing trance with people, or like with my experience, what are you experiencing when you see somebody struggling to bring their spirit back, or struggling through, trying not to absorb whatever they're witnessing in trance, just trying to help them observe, because again, you don't want to do the work for them, but how do you step in? What were you seeing or doing, like with me, if that helps to give an example?
Yeah. So when it comes to trance and also when it comes to just doing shadow work with individuals, it is all about timing and all about what you say and how it's delivered. That is the main part of it, is when people are either in their shadow or they're stuck in trance, it's a very vulnerable space. And they're going to receive every single word you say, the way you say it, and you have to be able to understand how they are going to integrate that, how they're going to take it. And there's times where there needs to be fierceness and intensity, and there are times where it needs to be gentle and present. And particularly with you, it makes sense because, again, in the body, the physical body, there is a lot of memories, a lot of narratives around trauma, bad, this is unsafe. Versus in your spirit, there's safety. This is safe. This is beautiful. This is home. And when those two come, now there's a clash, there's friction. And so the spirit and the body are now fighting each other because one has narratives deep in shadow and one has narratives of medicine. And you, once again, are the hollow bone. You're the middle of that friction. And so in that moment, you had a choice, you had a decision to make. And like you said, you knew exactly what I meant when I stood over you. Is it wasn't, oh my God, do you want me to take this away from you? It was, do you want me to get rid of it? And you knew it wasn't just getting rid of the pain in the fight. What it was is, do you want me to do this for you and claim that narrative to your spirit, to your body, that you cannot do this? And in that moment, I remember you looked and you said, no. I was like, okay. And then I walked away and you took a little more time and you finally came back in. And then following that, the following trances, you came back in softer. Because once again, the narrative of the body and the spirit, now there was a shared narrative of we want to be here. The body says, listen, this sucks to be here, but I want to be here. The spirit says, it's nice to be up here, but I want to be here. So now there is a shared narrative. There's a shared medicine. So now the locking in process becomes easier. It's the same shit with shadow work, is it's looking at where is that friction? Where are things not adding? Because about duality is I can understand this side and that side, but I agree with this one. That's conviction. That's how we move out of duality. And that's what people are getting into with what you experience and also in shadow work is you understand your shadow. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. You understand your medicine. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. You understand both. Now you have the choice to agree. You can agree to that life is hard. You can agree that you're a victim, you're broken, whatever it is.
Yep.
You can also agree, I can do what I need to. I'm the solution. I am the one that I've been waiting for. And
Mm-hmm.
that's that piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not the problem, you're the solution. You said that the other day on your page too, and that really hit me just on the right day. I was having intrusive thoughts, and if you're somebody that experiences intrusive thoughts, nothing has to trigger them. They literally just happen. And I have a lot of pretty talk in my shadows. Like my shadows want me to, the way they speak to me is like, but you deserve to like not be so strong. You deserve to not be like holding yourself up so well. You deserve to crash out and cause chaos and be all fucked up and whatever. Believe these shitty narratives. Believe us, right? And when I heard that, I was like, oh, yeah, well, those are thoughts. That's cool. But how I feel about those thoughts is really what's going to dictate my actions. So if my choice is to say, oh man, like my brain's fucked up, I'm really feeling that, that's my brain just doesn't want to be here. My brain's telling my body it doesn't want to be here. Well, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Right. And we go down. And so I have sorry, I'm sitting on keys. There you go. Um, what was I saying? What was I saying?
Intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you bring up the word narrative, and I think it's really important because we write our own narratives. A lot of it happens in here, and a lot of the times it's just not reality. My brain waking up one day and saying, "Oh, maybe you should, run your car off the road." It's kind of my choice still to say, "Is that reality for me right now? Like, is that how I really feel? Is that what I really want? Is this just a passing thought? And oftentimes people, I try to remind, because I have family who have really bad intrusive thoughts and OCD and stuff. I try to remind them it's like, these are, you have thousands of thoughts a day. It could have been any thought that pissed you off, any thought that made you feel XYZ. Thoughts have a purpose. That's not what I'm saying, but it is our choice. We liberate ourselves through choices of who we want to be, what story we're writing with our lives, what parts of ourselves we're willing to walk with and carry with, humility and responsibility, but also accountability and discipline, and not just awareness, but actual actions that then lead to forging. And like, I almost think of it as like golden script being written on your spirit. It's like, as you do things, these things get written on your spirit and you carry that. And everything that I've done to get myself on the side of recovery, be it addiction, be it bipolar, be it just being a person, it's always required some type of serious choice, serious deliberation, and then serious choice. And so with shadow work, that's a serious choice you're making. It's not just signing a contract. You're working at, Chipotle when you're 18, 19 years old. And it's like, all right, I'm going to work here for a year, whatever. This is like your whole life. This is your whole world. Um, this is your whole spirit that we're talking about. And so that decision does not come lightly. And the decision I made to vow my life to this purpose I have, that's not said lightly. And that's not always said with only excitement. I remember I was listening to some of our old messages, and I remember saying to you, like, I don't want big medicine. Like, I'm afraid to have that. I'm afraid to carry that, because in this world, it's not the way that it was for our ancestors who were really in that, and they understood that, and it was grounded in culture as much as anything else. Now we're at a place where we're really having to find and dig and search and seek. But in that process, it's like, do I do I really have the support to do these things that I want to do? Am I really capable of it? Can I do it? Can I trust in the path that I'm walking, even if I can't see the end? Because if I'm doing the right thing, and by doing the right thing, I mean, if I'm working in alignment with my authenticity and my values, that probably is going to walk me towards some big shit. And being afraid of that big shit, you almost self-sabotage yourself of like, I'm not gonna trance today because I'm afraid of what's gonna happen, or I'm not gonna journal today because I don't want to hear my own thoughts, or whatever. We stop ourselves on that progression, on that wheel, the progression of that wheel so often. We get stuck in the mind, we get stuck in the how do we change this? And that's where I was like, Western society, Western colonization, um, Western perspectives on shadow work, even, it wasn't enough. It didn't equate enough to spirit. And so, in being afraid of my own medicine and hearing your story of also being taught to be afraid of your medicine, like, what is the turning point for people? Like, how can we help people see that choice? They always have choice with this, that you don't, just because you accept spirit and a spiritual path does not mean that you're going to be waking up with people at the side of your bed. That's not for everybody, right? Being afraid of your medicine isn't always to go out and be a healer or to do spiritual work. Sometimes, to your point, you've said this yourself, sometimes it's being a really amazing mother. Sometimes it's being a really big, activist in your community. There's different ways that medicine comes through. So I just wonder if you have any advice for somebody who might be in a stage of like, I want to take that next step, but I'm afraid. How do we work through that fear, and how do we integrate a feeling of liberation when we do make that choice to step in with spirit, however we see fit?
Yeah. The first step is to acknowledge that this life is sacred. We are taught through religion and even in some traditions that the flesh is sinful, that this body is a bad thing. And it's not, because life in of itself is a medicine. You're not going to be able to embrace your medicine, because what I truly believe is your story is your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You create that story, you co-create with it. And some people, they hit a point where that co-creation comes through doing medicine work. And again, whatever capacity that looks like. The problem is people are seeing other people's purposes, like in mainstream spirituality, and they're like, oh, I want to be that. And the problem is, though, is they're living an inauthentic path. The spirit
Hmm.
didn't call you to it. You didn't get initiated into it through the spirit world. It's through the certification or whatever. And so people who are afraid to step into their medicine or are afraid to begin their shadow work, what it first comes down to is you have to ask yourself, how much do you value this life? Is it really comes down to that of how much do you value this life? And how much do you think you deserve to know the spirit world? Because
Mm,
here's the thing, y'all. Either we do the work now or we're going to do it in the afterlife.
right.
Is we don't escape it. That's why a lot of this work is ancestral because it's like they were ancestors who didn't have the privilege to do the work now, or
Hmm.
didn't have the resources to do the work now. We're
Hmm.
living during a time where the collective shadow is so large, you could go on the news any day and you're going to see shadows everywhere. The medicine that's coming in is not more love and light. The medicine is we need to look at these shadows, we need to acknowledge them, see them, and not be scared. And here's the other thing too is your work should not be based off your mood.
Mm,
Your work should not be based off your mood.
yeah.
Is if you are only doing this work when you're passionate or when you feel fiery or when you feel flow and good, that's not what this work's about. It doesn't care about your mood. Spirit doesn't care if you're happy at it, if you're sad at it, or you're good at it. Same goes with you when you're doing medicine, when you're living in your medicine. It doesn't matter about your mood. What it matters about is are you living in your medicine? So there's that.
Yeah. And that word medicine is so misconstrued in this area, in this realm of being a person. So can you explain what you mean when you say medicine? Because I think that's
Mhm.
something that might be helpful.
Yes. So medicine, it's a very complex thing, but also very simple. So the best way I can describe medicine to someone is medicine is what innately makes you you. The gifts that you hold inside of you, in your mind, in your heart, in your body, in your spirit. It's your unique gifts. So for some people, that may be creativity and art. For some people, that may be cooking. For some people, they may be very organized and structured. It starts at that surface layer, like that, like the
Hmm.
positive characteristic traits, I guess we could say.
Hmm.
But then there's so much more to it. Your medicine also encompasses the medicine of your ancestors. So some people's ancestries, you come from warriors. You come from very intense, fiery individuals. Some of you come from ancestors who were very soft and gentle, that lived
Hmm.
more in the beauty. Some, and then so it encompasses the ancestors. And then also encompasses the unique spirits that work with you. So every spirit, just as us humans have medicine, so does everything else. So for example, elk, right, has spirit. Elk medicine's about gentleness, heart, endurance, strength. And so that's a part of medicine too. So when we say live in your medicine, it's living out the greatest parts of you, what the world is being at, like what the world asked of you in this world from your medicine. Not
Hmm.
what's been demanded from you of who you need to be or what you are. No,
Right.
but you came into this world for a unique reason. And when you begin to understand that, the best way to understand your purpose is to understand your medicine.
Hmm.
Because when you understand your medicine, you understand the gifts, what is innately of you. Is my medicine looks very different than yours, very
Right.
different than my elders, different than the people in the containers.
Yep.
The reason being is we're not meant to be cookie cutter, this is it. That's how real healing work goes, is you understand your spirits, how they move through you, the healings they bring forward. Is I'm not going to be doing womb healings. However, someone who has more womb medicine will. I'll
Hmm.
be doing more the shadow work, the intensity, the severity, right? So medicine is your unique expression in the beauty that you're meant to bring to this earth. It's the antidote.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. That in and of itself was what kind of shifted my mind was like, you, there's so many like constructs that make us want to define ourselves. And when you step into shadow work, there's so much shedding that goes on. It's not really about defining yourself quite yet. I'd say the defining yourself comes like a couple months after ending the 6 month period because you're really just investigating for that whole 6 months. And also another thing that I think might be a good just informational thing are shadows opposite of medicine and how do medicines and shadows interact?
Hmm. Okay, so. on an introduction level to
Yeah.
shadows in medicine, is I want you to think of shadows are the gatekeepers to the medicine. And as humans, a lot of the things that gatekeep, which are shadows, often show up in forms that are harmful.
Hmm.
So anger, resentment, betrayal, people pleasing, overgiving, self-righteousness, all of these things that we label as bad, right? Because behind every bad thing is a good thing, just as behind every shadow is a good thing.
Hmm.
The problem is in our world is we're taught black and white. It's good and bad.
Right.
And the thing is if you sit with the shadow long enough, you will see the medicine behind it. So, for an example, if you have the shadow of, let's say, you're fearful of your gifts, you're fearful of your potential in this world, you're fearful of the responsibility. As you dissect and address that shadow, what you will eventually reach is the medicine of that. And the medicine of that is understanding your path, is the potency of it, is it's realizing it's not a burden, it's actually a gift, and there's immense beauty in being in it. And so that goes to say is shadows gatekeep medicines, and they gatekeep them in scary ways. They
Yeah.
also gatekeep them in some very seductive, pretty ways.
Hmm.
Is it's whatever is keeping us from living in our medicine, that's a shadow. But the shadow isn't this thing we need to kill. Is when we understand a shadow and see it, then we also understand there's medicine behind it. Because it's no longer get rid of the shadows, live in just the love and light and medicine. No, is allow the shadows are like bumpers and they kind of keep you going. And it's up to you to pause and go, okay, is this really a bumper or is this actually a door for me to go into?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a post that you had made a while ago, and you said your greatest shadow is your greatest medicine. And the westernized version of that, that I actually said and experienced was the depth of your pain is the availability, is the capacity at which you can also feel joy. So it's
Yes.
like the level, the depth, the capacity, literally the containership for which you can experience that. That also is another side of the same coin. We can't have just all of our pain and we can't have just all of our joy. It goes hand in hand. It's one coin. So you either have the coin or you don't have life. And it just sort of brings us back to that really prioritizing of like, do I want to be here? And if I want to be here, how am I going to do that? Um, so much of the work that I want to do and that I've begun to do is really advocating for the side of recovery. We hear so much about this is what anxiety is, and these are the symptoms, and this is how it makes your life hard, and this is what it's like to be autistic as an adult, and all these things. Valuable information. Self knowledge is extremely important, but it doesn't give you a path. It's just the chapter, it's the name of the chapter in parts of your book. It's not the fucking book. It's not the answer. It's not the cure all, be all, end all. So I think, thank you for that clarification for people, because I think we hear the word shadow and we think it's these like dark parts of us that don't need to be brought to light. Like they're things we need to hold down and suppress and get rid of. But if we didn't have shadows, there would be no expansion. There would be no natural progression of evolving as spirits. So it's vital that we have these experiences, but it's even more important and paramount for our resiliency, for our sustainability, to bring in the medicine at the same time, which is another point that you always say, and I think is really important. It's not necessarily the most helpful to do shadow work on your own, because you're going to just keep picking up shards of your shadow, and you're not really going to be able to see why those shadows exist. Before starting shadow work, I was doing that. I was very quickly like, well, this happened this way and I thought this way and all these things, because behind that was this, and this, right? I've always described the things that I've gone through as initiations. If I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't be able to resonate with people the way that I do. I wouldn't be able to share wisdom and knowledge the way that I do. I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be interested in the things I am, right? So shitty shit happens, but from that darkness can come light. We really are, as humans, natural alchemists. It's really the coolest part of us. We can create things, we can destroy things, and everything in between. So for you, shadow work as we know it in the Western world, what is the difference between like Carl Jung shadow work or like the shit we see on TikTok, the journal prompting, the journals that are like made to do shadow work, which really throw me for a loop because I'm like, holy shit, you're going to do all this like in your head? That's you're going to explode. Your head's going to explode, first of all. Um, so yeah, what is the difference between shadow work as we know it mostly in the Western world versus like the indigenous teachings of the medicine wheel, for example?
Yeah. So when it comes to Carl Jung's approach, and well, when it comes to Carl Jung's approach, where he got all of his teachings for what we know as shadow work was from indigenous people. He literally says this is through sitting in ceremonies, through understanding their teachings, he then made what we know as shadow work. He coined the term, didn't
Mm-hmm.
create it, coined the term of it, and that's what made it palatable for the Western mind. However, what's happening is it's we need to get out of our minds. We're more than just our mind. And
Mm-hmm.
that is where traditional shadow work steps in. That's what we do in cardinal shadow work is we're not doing just the approach of the mind and journal prompts. All of that is of the mind. Why? Because it's journal prompts. It's making you think. It's
Yeah.
stimulating thought. And when it comes to shadow work, is it's looking at all parts of the self. So you're looking at your mind, which is what a lot of us have already been doing. Then you're looking at your body. So you're looking at the physical, your actions, your behaviors. More importantly, you're now looking at your heart. And so in the heart, we move into the intangible, what we feel, our relationships, the pleasures and the shadows, the pleasures and the medicines. And then to your point that you said earlier is the spirit. And the spirit is the part of us that I truly believe, and I see it and I know this, is we are so severed from our spirits.
Yeah.
Is we have been taught we are just a meat suit. Look at materialism. Look at the main concept that a lot of people view in the Western world is once you die, you die. What we are is just our brain. We're a whole bunch of chemicals moving. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look at our ancestors, we don't stop. Is there's more to us than this life. This life is sacred and important, but there's more to it. And
Yes.
so that reconnection, that is what brings purpose, and that's what also brings sacredness to this life is if you understand that you're here for a reason, that there's intention, there's purpose, you're going to honor that more than,
Yeah.
well, if I'm just a meat suit and there's no point to this and it just ends at the end,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Everything's just a means
traditional,
to an end.
exactly. So traditional shadow work is using the medicine wheel, but more importantly, looking at all those parts and reclaiming the medicine is in mainstream spirituality, especially when it comes to like what we know as shadow work, is it's just beat yourself up. What are the bad parts? And it's also a blame game. This is
Mm-hmm.
dad's fault. This is mom's fault. This is
Mm-hmm.
society's fault. When it comes to traditional shadow work, it's also where's the accountability on you? Where
Yes.
do you need to be in integrity? What needs to change? And what is the medicine that is being asked of you from this? Is every shadow, and if that's you take anything away from this, is it's that ask yourself, what is the lesson? Because these things happen to us, yes, but if we don't retrieve the lesson from it, we stay in the shadow of it. The
Yes.
lesson is the medicine in it.
Yes. I think people have a hard time looking at, like my grandma, for example, she's very in the human experience of things. And she's had a lot of tragedies and injustices in her life, as we all have, but she's 79 years old. So she's had a lot, right? And she very much has like a hard time accepting the idea that the people in her life chose that suffering or chose to, have the lives that they've had and have things happen to them the way that they did that affected her, right? And made her lose people she loved. And so what would your mind shifting maybe um question for somebody or thought around that? Like how can we help people who view that as like a really awful, terrible thing, as suffering as just it's only suffering or it's only good?
Hmm.
How can we bridge that gap for people? And
Yeah.
maybe even how does shadow work bridge that gap for people?
Yeah. What I believe is, when we come down into this life, there are milestones that we're going to touch regardless. So, for an example, there's initiations that are going to happen regardless. So, me finding this spiritual work, that was going to happen regardless. What is up to me and in my free will is how do I get there?
Mm-hmm.
What happens in between these milestones and how does it look? Is I was going to find this spiritual work regardless. That was going to happen. I know that. In every timeline, that was going to happen. However, what I did with them, how I got there, who I learned them from, the path it looked like, that was up to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people have a difficulty of like, well, why did that happen? All these things, is there's nuance to the story is I also like have difficulty with being like, okay, well, you came here, everything's written for you, set in stone, there's no free will.
Yeah.
100% disagree with that, is we're in
Right.
co-creation. But there are these milestones, these initiations that spirit, your ancestors have for you regardless. And so when we're struggling with these hard initiations or how things played out, again, it's reflecting on what was the lesson within this. What
Hmm.
is the shadow trying to teach? Is there's a path that we can become bitter and resentful and view this as suffering? Or what is the flip point of this as trying to show us? What is the medicine? Is maybe it's trying to honor life more by experiencing so much death. As
Hmm.
individuals I know that have so much death in their lives, one, it's because they have a lot of death medicine, but the power of death medicine is it teaches you to honor life. It
Yes.
teaches you the power of transition. It teaches you the power of also rebirth. Is as an individual who witnesses so much death, you have to alchemize that death into something of importance, into something of life. Is the
Yes.
dead don't just die to die. Is they die because there's a medicine that comes with life.
Yes. Yes. I had during the ceremony, the weekend, the same thing happened. I had two ancestors who never showed up in trance in the whole 6, 7 months that we did stuff, that we did our container, and they showed up, and it was like they sat me down and they said to me, "It's like we left so you could stay," and that's I think true for everyone in their own unique ways. But for me, when I heard that, and that of course was in trance, when I heard that, it was like now I know why I have a different experience of death than most people because I have experienced it so many times, so young in so many different ways. But because later on now, I in my own life, I romanticized death for so long. I romanticized it was like to me, it was like a graduation ceremony almost. It's like finally you get like to be relieved of this experience. But it's so true that this is such a sacred experience. Like there are spirits waiting to come here, like waiting and waiting and waiting and hoping and waiting for their divine assignment. Um, so I think it's this thing again of the mind, right? Like we're taught to be like, but it's not, but like that's not right. It's not okay. It's about yeah, of course it's not right and it's not okay. But as right as unwrong as wrong and unright as something could be is as right and important and valuable as it could be. So again, it's just that duality of like constantly having to accept that you're not really going to ever know shit, but the shit that you can learn will be really, really important if you choose to take it on, and utilize it appropriately. I think with the way that our world works now, with the way that technology is so intertwined with every day, we have access to information that is not true. We also have information availability to information that's not as potent as it once was. So even though Carl Jung like coined this term, brought it to the Western world so that it could be digestible, people would like accept it as not like a pseudoscience or just a spiritual, culturally religious, whatever belief. That was a feat in and of itself. So right, wrong, or indifferent, what he was doing, it brought a sense of medicine to the world. And so I think some people they really want to feel like for there's a perfectionist part of it was like you really want to see what you're doing and how it's going to ripple and why you're doing it and it's important, but that's not what's going to hold you to your medicine. It's just your decision to hold yourself to that medicine every day. It's a vow to that medicine. It's a vow to the people you love. It's a vow to the things you're passionate about to say, I am solely and wholly devoted to being here to experience this experience. And like
Yep.
once you do that, you're so free.
Yep.
It's just like so free. And it's scary to people because that type of freedom looks very idealistic. It looks very like hippy dippy woo woo, to a lot of people, but it's so grounded when you get to that place of like, no, like I have choice in all of this. I have choice in all this. I had choice in all of this. Disregarding your choice is where we get into, I think, like the blame game, right? You disregard your position, your part in your suffering, your part in it. Because I'll tell you, I lived in shadow from probably 10 years old on. I was very aware, very aware. Um, but of course, my awareness only kind of brought me more demise. It didn't teach me anything to be aware. Stepping into, getting diagnosed bipolar at 18, stepping into all this Western stuff, dabbling in a lot of other things as well, naturopathic stuff, whatever. It it was only the mind and the body that was being looked at. So again, it just if you really do want to heal things in yourself, and not heal to say that's good, that's done, I don't have ever have to look at it again, but to live with it and live with it with purpose, with meaning, with intention, to not stop at the pain, but to transmute it into purpose. Like that is what shadow work did for me. It solidified that knowing, and it gave language to a lot of the things that I had experienced in my life that I wouldn't have otherwise. There was nobody in my life who could have translated it the way that shadow work, the way that the wheel, the way that walking with your medicine and walking with your shadows just as much can provide this sense of freedom, this sense of oneness with everything. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I don't understand, but I'm here to do that too. I'm here to be a part of it. It's just, it always comes back for me to experiencing the experience, being here, showing up. Just show up,
Mhm.
because
Just
you
showing
really
up.
don't know. You really don't know.
It's
Yeah.
true. Just like you said, shadow work is translating our pain into purpose. Boom. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. I'm curious too. There was another thing that you said. One of my like final questions here is, when you had just started stepping into like one-on-one sessions, or just having clients, what brought you to that knowingness that you wanted to go out and share this information and share this wisdom and show up? Like, what really keeps you to do that? Because there are so many, I don't want to say fake healers, but there's so many people out there who they put the image on, they don't have the essence. And so, two-part question here. How do you make sure that you're not put in that position of being like somebody's everything?
Yeah.
And simultaneously, how can people be discernful of when there is a teacher showing up in the world who might not be reverently showing up?
Yeah. So it kind of answers both. Is it's all about why you are doing what you're doing. Is for an example, like when I started to do this work, is I didn't start it because I was like, oh, I can make money off of this. How I started was I actually started with astrology. It was zodiacal shadow work before it was cardinal shadow work. The reason being is in your birth chart, I was realizing you can see people's shadows in medicines through observing the way that I teach in the traditional medicine wheel, and then also seeing in the chart. I was able to see someone's shadow in their chart before they created the name. And I was like, holy
Wow.
shit, like it's the same.
Wow.
And so I started with that, and it started with me doing it with my elder, and I did it with a couple other folks. And I wasn't like charging, I just thought it was interesting. So I was like, I want to see if there's truth to this. And there was. And then my elder was like, you should share this. I was like, okay. So I started to share it. And then she was like, well, no, like people, they need to compensate you for your time. There's exchange.
Yeah.
Because we don't live in a world where people can pay you with chickens and housing. Like there's a different type of change,
Yeah.
monetary. So I was like, okay. So I started doing that and it blew up. I didn't expect it to, it just did. And I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I started to make a little money off of it. And what I realized though, with the shift between zodiacal shadow work and cardinal shadow work, was people were now blaming their astrological placements.
Mm.
Like, oh, well, I'm a Cancer moon. That's why I'm coddle people. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Like they
no,
couldn't
you can't.
help it.
Yeah. Again, it's like the identity became the issue versus no, like this is a shadow and it can be changed because it's in the whole spectrum, that
Mhm.
expression. But anyways, so what that I share that, I don't know why I shared that, but I think that ties into the point of like how to discern one, if this person's in integrity, and two, are you in integrity? Is are they doing it to be in service or what is their other reason?
Mhm.
Is for me, my foundation, regardless if I was getting paid for this work or not, I would still do it. Is I did it for my elder for 8 years for free with her, like on her side and whatever service, because the thing is I love the medicine.
Yeah.
I love the spirits. I love the work.
Yeah.
And so money, that I'm blessed that that is what got involved into it. And that's how I'm allowed to live my life the way I do.
Yeah.
But even if it wasn't, I would still do it. So for individuals that are looking for teachers or elders, you have to ask yourself, why do they do this work? And a lot of times you'll see like sleazy shamans, that's what I call them, where
Mhm.
they say like, oh, the medicine called me to do this, or,
Mhm.
this is part, and it's like, it shouldn't be a performance, it should be an essence.
Yep.
Is I'm sitting right here, right, in like a workout tee.
Yep.
Is I'm not wearing a headdress, I'm not doing all the presentation, the performance to
Yep.
sell to you that I'm spiritual. is I'm
Yes.
going to show you it by how I show up. And that is that discernment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think going into the world too, so many of us, when we start our spiritual journey, we feel like we need to present like spiritual people. It's really funny. Like you see the final boss versions of like the spiritual ladies and the moon circles and all the things. And you're just like, wow, that's special. But yeah, no, that's, I think why your journey coincided with you being able to live and exist as a human being doing the work that you do and having your time be valued and your wisdom be valued. That's a really, really special, cohesive place to be in that not everybody's going to experience. But you, as you said, you were going to do this regardless. There's a natural and innate inclination for you to do this. I think there's also a natural and innate inclination for people to find a spiritual backing or have a spiritual presence in their life, if not feeling spiritual about themselves, having a spiritual connection. So it's innate in us to do this. And it's so important to have discernment with where you're taking your spirit, with where you're taking your energy, because not everybody has your best interest. And so feeling like you have to, like, for example, if you feel like you have to show up to a moon circle, wearing all white and flowy, and you've got your pearls on or whatever, like you've got your crystals, you got this dangling here and this, you know what I mean? That's great that you have all these things, but the potency and the availability to that medicine doesn't exist just because you want it to or because you bought something. You know, it doesn't, that when you really start to do true spiritual work for yourself, for your spirit, for the sake of your lineage, for the sake of your community, that, your close knit community, your family, kids, friends, whatever, it's not about making money. It's not about being seen as a certain way. It's not about promotions and giving people 3-day intensives and thinking that they now have this under this feather in their cap. It's just not real. So it's discernment is something that I have taken very seriously on this journey. So when I came to shadow work in the way that you described it, it was like, yeah, this person is real. This is essence. This is not image. You're not coming on here to talk deeply with us because that's giving you the gratification. This work is hard. This work is, yes, there's satisfaction. Yes, there's massive amounts of fulfillment, but it's hard. It's not easy. And not everybody is going to like it. Again, it goes back to me saying what I did. It's like, in the beginning, I was really afraid of the medicines that were going to show up for me because I understood the responsibility of saying yes to those things. And also, once you say yes and you go back on that, there's a whole fucking like pinball series, you know what I mean, of shit that happens when you don't show up how you're supposed to. And then that whole cycle can happen again. But discernment again is a really, really important value, I think, to have right now. Because again, anybody and everybody can say that there's something online, and a lot of people sadly believe them, and a lot of people get really led astray.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. We're
Yeah.
living during a time of illusion. It's like the era of illusion.
Yeah.
And that's why shadow work's essential is sort through the bullshit, what's real, what's not.
Yeah.
Where do you align? Where are you at?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um, my last question is something that I like to ask from time to time, just people that I care about and love. If there was something that you could say to your younger self, having experienced all the things that you have now, what would be like your best top 3 things that you would want to say to yourself? Best advice.
Hmm. Okay. What I would tell is I'd say, you found it. You found it. Is I think so much as little kids, or at least let me speak for myself, it was about seeking, becoming, doing all of it. And I truly believe, like, in my life, where I am here is I'm the what it means to live is to experience. That's my definition. And so I would go back and say, you find it. You find the friendships, you find the purpose, you find the love, you find the pain, you find the sacrifice. You understand what it is. You find it. That's definitely, yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah, that's big. I feel that deeply. Um, I feel that deeply in my inner child because I think that's, again, when you're so young and that channel you have is so open. Um, you have capacity, but you don't have language for it, right? You have abilities, but you don't know how to properly channel it or properly bring it into the world just yet. And so when you finally get to that place in your life, you're like, oh, I'm on the other side. It's so important to say that. It's
Yeah.
so important to say that to yourself and then to say that to those around you who may be in a similar place.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. So how can people find you? How can people connect with you? Because you have, I, I don't know why you don't have like half the world following you on Instagram because you really, I mean, anybody who's listening to this for the first time or is going to go find Cole, enjoy. You have a beautiful, beautiful rabbit hole to go down. But yeah, where can people connect with you and find you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on Instagram. It's at the creator Cole. So it's the creator Cole. Somewhere else too to find me is on, I believe it's on Spotify and also Apple. I have a podcast called the Creator Cole Podcast. That's where I post all of the lives that I do on Instagram. I just post them onto Spotify so you can listen to them as you go. So those are the two really best places to find me. And then through that, I recommend you look through my feed, whatever resonates with you. And if it does resonate with you, then in the bio, there's the application for cardinal shadow work, which we've talked a lot about. You know, Floyd, you've done this, you can testify to it. It's hard, it's intense, but it's beautiful. It's worth it.
Yeah.
And so that's where you can find me is Instagram, the Creator Cole.
Yes, wonderful. And I will say too, for anybody interested in diving into cardinal shadow work with Cole, every bit of it is worth it. Every ounce of uncomfortability, every fear you have, everything, you are going to move through it faster than you ever thought you could. And you're going to leave that container a bigger spirit. And I don't mean bigger as in better. I just mean with more hollow bone, right? More availability for the medicine, more ability to channel and redirect shadows and transmute things. So, yeah, it's a beautiful journey ahead if you do take it. I highly recommend. A lot of us are jumping into a second bit as well. So I'm excited for when I get to do that. But thank you so much for your time today. This is the most soul filling conversation I've had all week. And it's such a privilege to know you and witness you. And I'm so grateful that you're in this world.
Thank you. I just love your medicine so much. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.